The January 30th meeting of the Scarborough Planning Board shall come to order. We please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Doreen, will you call the roll?
Rachel Henriksen,
Here.
Rick Meinking,
Here.
Jim Hebert,
Here.
Noah Perlu,
Here.
Roger Beely,
Here.
and Jennifer Ladd.
Roger is showing up online. Is Jen? Jen is not online yet. All right, Rick Duperry is not here, and in his absence, Jim Hebert will vote. The Noah Perlet is a new member of the planning board. He is here tonight. Since he has not been sworn in, actually, he cannot vote at this meeting. Noah will be or is the first alternate, and Jim is the second alternate. Next item on the agenda, approval of the minutes, January 9th, 2022. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Jim Hebert. Any corrections?
I have none.
In that case, please call the roll.
Rachel Henriksen,
Yes.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Jim Hebert,
Aye.
Jennifer Ladd, Roger Beely.
Yes.
We need to confirm that Roger is online.
I am.
Hear us, Roger?
Yes.
If Roger is not online and cannot participate in this, we do not have quorum.
I'm on and Roger is showing up, but he's may not be able to hear us or
I can hear you.
we're having issues.
So we are going to take a short recess and we'll resume with the planning board once we know that we have the quorum and Roger has the ability to participate in the meeting.
At the tone, please record your message.
Yeah, Angela, I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right, let me, testing, Roger and Jen, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
And we can hear you, so that's good. Jen?
Yes, all set.
All right. In that case, the board is back in session. Item number 5, consent item, Chamberlain Construction Incorporated requests a subdivision review of the 8th Amendment Dunstan Crossing subdivision. The amendment would transfer land from lot 108 to 107 and combine lots 106 and 107 to create one large lot. Additionally, a small portion of homeowner association land will be added to the newly formed lot 107 area. The property is further identified as Assessor's Map U 301, maps 106, 107, and 108 for the town.
Thank you. So I don't actually know how much more of a description I can give beyond what Rachel just said, but at the last meeting, the board requested that the applicant provide the updated trip generation scorecard, remove the Dunstan Tappan table outline from the plan set, as well as get us an updated plan set with the correct dates. I can see Mr. Chamberlain here in the audience. He and Sean Frank have provided staff with the appropriate information, and this has been given back to the board for consideration for approval, for which a draft motion has been provided. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is a consent item, and for those of you who are not familiar with the process, a consent item is essentially an item that the board has heard, and there were 1 or 2 issues that needed to be clarified before it could pass. According to the memo provided by the staff, those items have been submitted to the board. Does the applicant wish to say anything? I think you raise your hand. Is that how it's going to work? No, if the applicant wishes to say anything. All right, in that case, we have, does the board have any questions?
I have a couple quick questions for the applicant, if that's okay. These are really basic questions. So in here, you talk about deeding over land to the homeowners association. It's described as a small knoll.
Yes.
Can you just tell us how large of the parcel that's being deeded over to them is, and what, if it's something that needs to be managed, or if it's just a natural vegetation that's going to stay that way?
No, the small triangle technically is still in my ownership right now. It's land that's dedicated to go to the master association. And all it's for is the overall piece is a detention pond for the drainage on Paulson Drive. And this is a piece outside the needed area for the operation of the pond, outside the slope, or in case of a heavy storm, any storage capacity. It's outside all of those parameters and has no effect, and doesn't affect the access that the town will have for a easement to get to the pond in case they ever had to. So it's, in a sense, excess land. And it's a fairly small piece.
Thank you. I guess I'm wondering how is, when you say fairly small, it seems like that should be quantified on, I mean, if it's, yeah, it seems like that you should know exactly how big of a parcel, if it's changing ownership over to the homeowners association. How big is it?
It's not, right now, we're not changing ownership. We haven't transferred that land to the master association yet. It would be sometime, it was land that was going to be allocated to the association. The entire detention pond area is probably in the neighborhood of, 2.5, 3 acres. This is probably less than a quarter of an acre. Probably, much less. It's a fairly small piece.
Okay. I guess that I'm a little confused why it's in here. If it's not part of this request, why it's described in here, but fair enough. I don't want to hold this, so we can move on.
Thank you. And in the original application, there was an outline of that area. It did not transfer into the materials that we got this time, but there was in the original application. I have a draft motion. Dunstan Crossing, Eighth Amendment subdivision, final subdivision review. I move to approve the project titled Dunstan Crossing subdivision proposed by Raynan Properties LLC and Chamberlain Construction, Inc., as depicted on the plan set prepared by Sebago Technics dated 1/13/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings. The proposal includes several lot line modifications to the existing Dunstan Crossing subdivision. The modifications include the revision of lot configuration for lot 107 along Paulson Drive. As part of the proposal, lot 107 would be combined with lot 106 and also receive a small part of the land area of lot 108 and adjacent HOA land, increasing its size from 0.4 acres to approximately 1 acre to accommodate a single-family home. Conditions. Prior to the recording of the subdivision plan, the applicant shall A, provide a full plan set of the most updated Dunstan Crossing subdivision. This shall be reviewed and approved by the planning department. Is there a second?
Second it.
Seconded by Doreen. Call the roll, please.
Rachel Hendrickson.
Yes.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes.
Flad,
Yes.
Jim Hebert.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me ask my colleagues who are online. I may end up not noticing you or forgetting that you're up there at some point during the meeting. If you do have a question, will you just start waving your hand frantically? And hopefully I'll catch you. I'll catch it. You can also use the raise the hand function on your computer, and Eric will catch that. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. Number 6, Group 1 Automotive, Inc. requests a site plan amendment review for 2 building additions totaling approximately 2,300 square feet. The project is located at 136 US Route 1, Assessors Map U47, Lot 94. Eric?
Thank you. So Group 1 is in front of the board with a site plan amendment for 137 US Route 1. It's currently the Mercedes-Benz dealership. The amendment would include 2 building additions, one at the front of the structure and one at the rear, totaling approximately 1,800 square feet. This property is subject to a contract zone agreement, which the applicant has gone through that process accordingly, starting with the joint planning board and council meeting earlier in the fall. The contract zone was approved by the town council and received preliminary site plan approval from this board. With that agreement signed, the board can now review as the site plan before the agreement gets recorded. Staff has provided a draft motion for the board's consideration with several conditions relating to minor plan changes and a requirement to record the agreement in the registry of deeds within 30 days. And it's our understanding that the applicant will do that either depending on the plan changes tomorrow or within the next week. But that's just a deadline that we had been speaking with Group 1 about. So with that, I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant. Please state your name.
Good evening. My name is Burke Air with Air Design Group. Do you need my address too? I'm at 215 Johnston Street, Rock Hill, South Carolina. I'm a civil engineer and represent Group One Automotive. We've been in front of you guys a couple of times. And not a terrible amount of things have changed in our plans since we first started coming in. We have a couple of new comments that we received on Friday. Those are the minor plan changes that Eric was referencing. And they are, one was just a reminder from one of the previous comments we had from the fire marshal, which was that the fire alarm and sprinkler system need to be extended into the new additions, which is, we acknowledge, and that is our plan. And then the two new comments were to add the total impervious cover of the site onto the site plan. So just to provide a note of what, when this project is done, what the existing impervious covers on the site will be. And I have those numbers calculated, but we haven't, received these comments on Friday, so we hadn't added them to the plan just yet. The other comment was that in our stormwater memo, we referenced some old approvals, but we did not reference the 2015, 16, or 21 amendments. And so to just add that history into that document, I don't think there are any technical changes. It doesn't change any of the proposed addition areas or our proposed mitigation, which is still to replace section of existing parking lot with porous asphalt. So the plan changes are pretty minor. We've been through a review process with the town's attorney and also the Group One attorney to get the finer points of the agreement. We have the agreement signed. I have it with me today to try to record tomorrow, but there's a couple of little question marks I have before we do that. One would be, I really need to get the plan with that note added to it so that it'll be recorded with it. So I don't have that plan change made yet, so I can't record that. And then the other is the agreement references a site plan with a date that of the site plan that we had submitted and had approved before. So I don't know if we need to modify that date in the agreement document.
I'm having a little difficulty hearing you. Could you speak
I'm
up?
sorry. So we have a couple of little minor agreement edits because we have a plan change. We were including an exhibit of the plan in the agreement. And it had a date. So I think there's some language in the agreement. I'm not an attorney, but that says as amended. But anyway, there's a couple of little items like that I want to clear up with staff just before we record. We don't have any problems making the changes that have been stipulated and that are, I think, included in your in the motion, if there's a motion tonight.
Thank you. This is an item that it's available for public comment. Is there any member of the public that would care to comment? Any hands raised? All right, members of the board, any questions, any comments?
It just
Mr.
sounds like
Monken.
there's some administrative tying up that needs to be done in terms of dating and that thing, stuff like that. I certainly don't have any concerns about what they're planning to do. It's been before us before. Actually, it's been before several times in several different iterations. I hope this is the one that you move forward with and I don't have to do any more homework. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Jim?
Madam Chair, I concur with Mr. Meinking. The applicant has addressed some of the issues, at least we were discussed last time, and the remaining issues that they have left are administrative that I think the town can handle without having to come back and get before us, especially this. We're talking about changing dates and minor points on the drawing that doesn't impact the scope.
Thank you. Anybody else? Noah?
So my apologies if this has already been covered in previous meetings. It well may have, but if not, could you just tell us briefly about the pavers that you're gonna be using, the water permeable asphalt or pavers? What is the product that you're gonna be using? Has it been used here in Maine previously?
It has.
It's a known used product.
It's been used before. In fact, there's a great write-up and some of the journals about the Mall Road that was Maine DOT built that was using this exact same mix. And what the mix is there's a storage layer of washed stone that has voids in the stone because all the stones are the same size, so it leaves airspace. That's 12 inches deep, so it provides a volume of stored water below the pavement before it can percolate into the soil. And then the asphalt is the same materials as a regular asphalt road, but there's a larger aggregate and a little bit less finer aggregate to make it porous. So it's well used even in this area, even in cold climates. And we selected a mix from some main DOT specifications that have been used in South Portland.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, I have a draft motion. Group 1 Automotive Mercedes-Benz Site Plan Amendment Review. I move to approve the project titled Mercedes of Scarborough proposed by Group 1 Automotive, Inc. as depicted on the plan set prepared by Air Design Group dated 1/6/23 with the following findings and conditions. Findings. The proposal amends an existing site plan to construct 2 building additions. One in the rear of the building totaling 1,745 square feet, and another squaring off the front of the building that totals 490 square feet. The additions are proposed for additional showroom, customer, and office space. Conditions: prior to recording the contract zoning agreement, the applicant shall: A, provide updated plan sets and stormwater memo as requested in the 1/30/23 staff memo. B, address planning board comments as discussed in the 1/30/23 planning board meeting. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. 2, the applicant shall record the contract zoning agreement in the registry of deeds by March 1st, 2023. This shall be reviewed by the planning department. 3, the additions shall have sprinkler and fire alarm systems extended to provide service. This shall be reviewed by the fire department. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Seconded by Jim Hebert. Doreen, call the roll, please.
Jim Hebert,
Aye.
Rachel Henriksen,
Yes.
Rick King,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
Yes.
Glad.
Yes.
Measure passes. Thank you very much. I suspect you'll be happy to take us off your calendar for every Monday night.
While we're offline, is that, Dan, did you put that same kind of impervious surface in one of the projects in the Downs?
The uplands did.
Okay, that, yep. So I was just, there's an example already in the Downs on that impervious surface.
Yep.
But I just was thinking of the most recent one. Yeah, just. Thanks.
Starbucks.
All right, item number 7, Crossroads Holdings LLC request a subdivision amendment review of the 3rd amended Phase 1 subdivision at the Downs. The amendment would widen right-of-way and change landscaping along Scarborough Downs Road near Route 1 to accommodate required Maine DOT TMP improvements. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R52 Lot 4. Eric.
Thank you. So as Rachel said, Crossroads is in front of the board with the 3rd amended subdivision for Phase 1 here at Scarborough Downs. This area is in the Route 1 area of Scarborough Downs Road. Fairly straightforward with some right-of-way widening and landscape adjustments to accommodate that widening, and some Maine DOT traffic movement permit upgrades. Staff has provided a draft motion for the board's considerations with several conditions relating to confirming that the subdivision plan matches the DOT TMP design for the offsites, and that some other confirmations be made by the applicant regarding the wetlands as outlined in the staff memo. And with that, I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for Crossroads, Mr. Bacon.
Good evening, Dan Bacon here with Crossroads Holdings in Scarborough Downs. As introduced already, this is actually an amendment to a landscaping plan approved a couple years ago at this point. The project implemented the majority of the landscaping as you're entering the downs on the right-hand side. The left-hand side, the landscaping, thanks, Eric, hadn't been planted because we knew that we'd be actually widening Scarborough Downs Road's exit from the project. So the traffic movement permit came about as we were kind of completing this end of the project. So we held off on putting plantings in to only kind of take them out. So this plan updates what was approved. And it corresponds with the lanes that we're adding exiting Scarborough Downs Road. It also corresponds with the changes to the radiuses. So the two corners coming in and out of the project right now, there are kind of those slip lanes or those individual lanes for right in or right out. Those are actually coming out to make the intersection a bit tighter. So you slow more as you enter or leave the project. And so as Eric introduced, this plan really kind of corresponds with that. It updates the subdivision plan in that we're providing additional right-of-way for the town street, given the widening of lanes coming out of the project. And in terms of the wetlands, on the original plan that was put together a handful of years ago, that wetland actually wasn't delineated. So the first wetland delineation was done in the kind of where development occurred within the first phase. And we came back and did a very thorough wetland delineation that was discovered. And so that was delineated. And so the first landscaping plan actually didn't recognize that. So it showed some landscaping in a wetland area. So we've updated the plan to be accurate in terms of the wetland, to leave the wetland alone. There's a minimal wetland impact based on the widening that's already been through the Army Corps of Engineers process from a permitting standpoint. So that's approved for a modest impact of the wetland for basically the side slope of the widening of Scarborough Downs Road. In terms of the actual planting plan, what we've tried to do is really kind of carry the theme of what's already in place. So we're extending that center median that right now you drive in and it's some hundred of feet, before you get to the median. That's extended down to the intersection and will be planted in a very similar fashion to the median that's in place now with the same trees and ground cover. And then the two sides of the intersection are designed to kind of match. So you'll have, as you enter the project, you'd have some kind of grass area in the right of way for sight distance, for kind of safety reasons. And because there's a sidewalk in place, and there will be the new traffic signal and controller. So we have some just sort of lawn area right at the corners. And then there's going to be dogwood sort of as the first row, and then pine is sort of the background. And so that would match on both sides of the intersection. And then we have some catman and some tall grasses that are going to be right below the Scarborough Downs sign. So in essence, that's kind of the proposal. And in terms of the actual intersection design review, staff's looked at that for a number of months, as well as the BNL, the town's traffic consultant. So that aspect has been reviewed and is actually going out to bid to meet our requirement to complete those improvements in this calendar year. So that's underway right now and not really part of the board's scope this evening. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions or board discussion.
Thank you. This is an item that is available for public comment as well. Is there any member of the public in the room or online who would like to comment? If you're online, please raise your hand with the function on your computer. If you are in the room, please approach the podium. No hands raised? Public comment is closed. Turn this over to the board. Are there any questions?
I have a question, Rachel. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, go
Great.
ahead.
Dan, I'm just curious about, I understand that the changes that you're proposing here are in relation to and in support of, DOT's required improvements on Route 1. But because we're looking at right-of-way widening on this, I'm just curious, how this either interacts or has the potential to interact with a potential bikeway connection to the Eastern Trail for Scarborough Downs overall. And I bring that up because I know that in the past, some of the other amendments and pieces of this larger project that we've looked at have identified through just sort of some like rough arrows on a graphic proximity of the Downs to the Eastern Trail, and but haven't really made any sort of clear routing connections. And I say that recognizing that if your offsite mitigation and your TMP through DOT required a formal connection to be made, that would be you know, I know that would have been rolled into that, but I bring it up because to widen the right of way here, but still only include sharrows at the approach to Route 1. I'm just curious about that. So I'm asking about whether or not there's been any further thought about how to make a stronger bike connection through this intersection.
We have talked to staff about, since the planning board's discussion on that, I think at master plan for town center, about adding bike markings in the shoulders on Route 1 from the Downs down to Commerce Drive at a minimum, and maybe that would extend further, but that's been the discussion, which would connect this intersection for kind of road bikers. So in both directions, we discussed that with staff, and which for those that feel comfortable doing that, for those that maybe are not as comfortable on Route 1, we are making that sidewalk connection, you know, from this intersection down to Commerce Drive. And so between those two things, that's the current approach, with kind of making more of a bike connection than exists today. We did review with traffic consultants with the intersection, kind of the Downs Road exit, if you will. It goes from a 12-foot lane with a bike shoulder to 3 11-foot lanes, and then providing for kind of those bike markings depending on what direction you're going. One of the considerations around the width of the road there was the wetland impacts, and trying to minimize wetland impacts to not include, you know, a 4-foot shoulder on top of what I just described. And that was essentially the compromise in terms of, and also bikers, if they're going to the Eastern Trail, you're going to see more, obviously, activity in that center left versus on the shoulder. So at this point, that's what we've done, Jen, to provide more than exists today in terms of a bike connection to Commerce Drive and then ultimately the Eastern Trail.
Okay. Thanks. Will the and again, maybe more, I know there was a staff comment actually about the offsite plans not being included in the submission. So maybe this is a question more relevant for that, but I'm curious if there's any sort of advanced inclusion coming for the signal upgrades at this intersection, such that bike signals might be an option down the road, or if that's not being factored in at this point.
I don't know how to answer that question. So advanced on the actual traffic signal, maybe we've talked about this in the past, Angela, that you know more than I in terms of the adaptive. Is that something that's enabled?
Yeah, Angela,
By
maybe you can handle this, please.
Sure. Yeah, this whole corridor is going to be upgraded with adaptive traffic signal with the Downs offsite TMP work. So my understanding, and probably, it's funny, Jen's asking because I would probably rely on her, or is that with the adaptive traffic signal, we're talking about upgrading of the detection. And there is opportunity to adjust that detection to accommodate cyclists as part of that. And so this is an opportunity, I would say that where she had mentioned you're sharing, like you said, you're coming out of just the Downs, and in order to detect cyclists, I think some upgrade would be needed with the cameras or adjustment, but that is something that this system would be able to easily accommodate in the future. Or we could look at it as we're implementing it. When we start tweaking, I think part of the system is it starts learning, and we start adjusting those detection zones. And that's something we can also fine tune. If that's the planning board's wishes, we can kind of put that in there too, is trying to adjust that for cyclists.
Yeah, thanks. I that is kind of what I was asking. Yes. I just, because of the shared nature of the treatment that's being proposed here. I mean, this is not an intersection for the faint of heart, for sure, on a bike. And so, like, with our current conditions and understanding that we have the opportunity here to work on revising some of the signaling and the equipment, it does seem to me like a situation where actually like a bike preemptive phase, which means that the signal equipment would detect a cyclist waiting at the front of this queue. And if the signal was programmed and had the appropriate equipment, there can be phasing adaptations that allow just the cyclist to have a little bit of a jump start, a lead interval through the intersection, which in a case like this allows someone on a bike to have just a few seconds head start before those dual left turns in particular. That's the one I'm looking at, before those vehicles come out sort of on top of them, allowing them to get across what's otherwise a pretty wide cross section for Route 1 here. So anyway, our signal technology is rapidly changing just in general. And so I hope that that's something that we are either planning for here or at least not precluding down the road. Thanks.
I just want to, Jen, thank you so much for this comment about, to me, this is one of the most important things that I'd like the developers to be thinking about and the planning board to be thinking about. This is an opportunity with the recent funding closure of the GAP project. We have an unbelievable resource that's about to be opened up. And at the timing of, building this really important neighborhood, to allow true, safe, and enjoyable access by bike from Bug Light Park into the Downs and all in between should be absolutely critical at this point. And it's sort of our responsibility to make sure that happens in a way that's safe, not just safe to the experienced road biker, but also safe to the parent with a kid or a biker that's not super confident to be able to go and ride between these neighborhoods. We have this incredible Eastern Trail resource that's about to be completed that we've been begging for years, and it's happening. And this is a moment where we need to be careful and make sure that we get this right, that it's accessible to everybody, not just cars.
Thank you. Any other comments? Dan, I see a consensus here. I can test it with a straw vote if you wish, that you work with the town in terms of developing what we've been talking about, an appropriate pathway, I guess, and safety pathway for the bikes. I do have to caution the folks on the board that that's not the subject that has come before us. What has come before us is very specifically what is here, a revision solely of the right of way with the landscaping. So this is not something that we can add to a draft motion at this meeting. But we can ask Dan if you are willing to work with Angela and appropriate staff to see what can be done in terms of making this area even more safe for the bicyclists.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we have a promise from Mr. Bacon. You let me know if he's following through with it.
Well, I guess I would say that one of the points that Dan mentioned at the beginning is the alternative is you widen it more. So it is relative to this application because the alternative is you add a bike lane, which is widening it, which impacts wetlands. So it's a balance. So I think this is the alternative, right? So I guess it is, I would argue it probably is relative to this outcome. So.
Yeah, I would respectfully disagree. Not by the language that we have in front of us. But evidently the town and the Crossroads are agreeable to working together to see what they can do to increase the safety for bicyclists in this area using whatever is available through the TMP or through the adaptive signaling. Is that what we understand?
Yes.
All right, Jen, go ahead.
That's fine.
Thank you. If at some point this is falling through, the town can certainly bring it back to us on the planning board. We can entertain that. Thank you very much. If there are no additional questions.
Sorry, I have one more question. I know I'm
Okay.
talking a lot here. I want to ask you about the vegetation plan. I'm looking at the species list on here. And has this been discussed at previous meetings?
The what list?
The species list for the vegetation? plan?
They are, as far as I know, all still approved by the as part of the master plan.
Okay, I think, but I am not 100% certain that the state of Maine banned the sale of Bradford pear a year ago, and it was no longer being able to sell as an invasive species. That's on this list here. I think I'm not 100% certain, but I thought I had read that on the list. And I guess I'm just surprised at the volume of non-native species in the plantings here, rather than edging towards native species. And so I really want to encourage you guys to think about a plan that includes native species plantings. I mean, all the grasses, all these invasive grasses, in which are, you know, a blowing distance from the Scarborough Marsh.
Yeah, I didn't think we had pear, like dogwood, pine, catmint, and maple were the primary species that, and I think they're on the site plan approved list for the town. But we can, if there's a certain species you're aware of that's
Most of the
not
species-
on the list.
Most of the species I've been looking at here are non-native, like the pine is a European pine. The grasses, one from Asia, one's from Africa. You know, so, I mean, I'd be happy to look through this with you guys if that was supportive, but it's a lot. It's, you know, it's not just one species that's on here. That's,
Madam Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, let me first of all say something. I'll recognize Angela, and that is the Long Range Planning Committee is reviewing all of the design standards for the town. And that includes the species list. So I'm staring at Autumn and making sure that she is writing down that we need to move that pretty fast. That's an easy thing to do, simply to look at what is allowed by the state now. Then Angela.
I just wanted to comment if it helps the board in their deliberation. Many times we put this in front of our sustainability coordinator, who is educated in obviously native and non-invasive species to review the plant list when we have elaborate plant lists. I think this probably didn't because it's a smaller project, smaller thing, but if it helps in your condition of approval, or helps in easing the board's mind, we can put that back through for her review.
And if I could just add on to that quickly, I had that same thought, and one of the conditions that is actually in the draft motion is address planning board comments as discussed tonight. I'm not sure if the board would prefer to see something specific that says including landscaping with respect to the species list, or if the board is comfortable with staff just interpreting that condition as planning board comments with respect to the landscaping. But either way, there's a condition on the draft motion to that effect.
Thank you. I'm thinking I'm thinking, to me, that works. The concern, and Dan's forehead is wrinkling a little bit, is what we have here is what's throughout the downs. So as soon as we detect the problem here or something that we want to correct by eliminating a species, or looking at different grasses, we now have a problem of a third of the downs being built using this species list. And that's a much more extensive question, really, and process of examination than just the species that are before us on the corner of Route 1. So I think there's nothing that can be done right now in terms of the rest of the downs. I think the conditions, they address the planning board comments as discussed in the 1/30/23 meeting, does cover the question of the plantings that we have there, and are there some appropriate or more appropriate alternatives that could be done, the downs would be willing to do.
Yeah, we're pleased to comply with that condition and work to become increasingly native. But to your point, we also want to correspond with what's planted across the street. So, but we can work with Eric closely on selecting, kind of finding that kind of middle ground, if you will. Happy to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? None? Therefore, I have a draft motion, Scarborough Downs Third Amendment Phase 1 subdivision amendment review. I move to approve the project title Plan Development Area 1 amended subdivision proposed by Crossroads Holdings LLC as depicted on the plan set prepared by Goral Palmer dated 11/22/21 with the following findings and conditions. Findings, the proposal would constitute the third amendment to Phase 1 subdivision at the Downs. The project would widen the right-of-way along Scarborough Downs Road and revise landscaping areas to accommodate required Maine DOT TMP improvements in this area. Conditions, 1, prior to release of the signed subdivision plan, the applicant shall, A, confirm with the town engineer that the designs for the off-site TMP improvements match the subdivision plan. B, address planning board comments as discussed in the 1/30/23 meeting. Is there a second?
Second,
Second from Roger Beely. Doreen, call the roll, please.
Rachel Henriksen,
Yes.
Rick Meinking,
Yes.
Roger Bailey,
yes,
Jennifer Led,
No.
and Jim Hebert.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Item number 8, Aaron Converse requests a sketch plan review for construction of a 126-room hotel located at 83 Mussey Road. The property is further identified as Assessors Map R55, Lot 17. Eric.
Thank you. So Aaron Converse is in front of the board with a sketch plan for a hotel at 83 Muzzy Road. For those of you familiar with the area, you might know this is a vacant parcel between Carrier Woods Apartments and almost directly across the street from Gallery Boulevard. Staff has provided substantial comment on this project for ease for both the board and the applicant come these formal site plan submission. Some of the more prominent comments include access management, setbacks from residential properties and building architecture, as well as reduction of the building height to meet the space and bulk standards of the B3 zoning district. And with that, I would turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And for the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Steve Calaserenos with Labella Associates. I'm here representing the applicant. I believe he is logged into this meeting, so he may be available for some additional comments if we have them. As Eric had indicated, we did receive comments last week, and we have gone through some of the comments. In general, we agree this is a sketch plan. We're really here to kind of bring this before the board, get some initial feedback and some things for us to think about as we move forward with this project. And one of the comments, some of the comments that were made, there are some inconsistencies on the plan. This is in fact a 4-story, 126 room proposed hotel. I think the plans do indicate 3 stories, so that's something we need to correct. There is a very basic site data bulk area regulations table that's included on the site layout plan that is going to be enhanced as we come in with an actual full site plan submittal package. We are working with Maine DOT on access and the requirements for a traffic impact statement or study. And we are working through that process as well. We are also working on getting the capacity assurances or the ability to provide utility services for the project as well. We have had initial conversations with all the agencies, and initially there weren't any major concerns that were raised. Specifically relative to access management, this is an existing parcel of land. I believe it is about 175 feet in width. We have pushed the driveway as far opposite the existing intersection and driveway as possible, and center line to center line of driveways were about 165 feet. We really can't go much further. The applicant is going to reach out to the neighboring property at 89 Mussey Road, I believe, to see if there's any way we can come to an agreement to provide an easement and a cross-access agreement so that they can utilize that intersection, but without any compelling reason, we don't know if they're going to do that or not. But we're going to move forward, addressing the comments that were provided by staff to this point. And with that, I guess I'll open it to the board if there's any questions for us.
Thank you. This item is subject to public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment either here in the room or online? We see one comment. Could you please?
Hi, this is Denise Hamilton, 2 Rat Road here in Scarborough. My concern with this property is from what I saw when I looked it up, this is only a 2-acre parcel. This is an awfully large building for such a small parcel. And I too would have concerns on the entrance and exit to this property since it is off from the traffic light. Carrier Woods doesn't have a traffic light. And then you've got the traffic light at, I think it's 87 Mussey Road across from Galleria Boulevard. People getting in and out of this property would be a nightmare, but I am concerned with the size of the building on such a small lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Any other comments?
No.
Public hearing is closed. Turn this over to the board, but first I'm going to make a comment here. It's a reminder that this is a sketch plan. And that the applicant has a lot of opportunity to listen to us and make changes where necessary. For the purpose of the applicant, the understanding of the applicant, we would be remiss at this point if we did not point out some problems that we foresee coming up. And they may be problems that we as a board do not have the ability to waive. There are some items that we can waive and there are some items that we can't. For instance, the height of the building. So this is an opportunity for us to take a very careful look and provide you with our best recommendations on what it would take for you to be successful in an application before this planning board. Saying that, I will turn it over to the board, but this time I'm just going to go down the row. So Rick?
Yeah, well, thank you, Madam Chair. There is some challenges here. Make no mistake about that. And I just, just to start off with, I think the building is too big for the lot. And so I'd be interested to see how you can manage that. I will also tell you that you are the first of many, I hope, as we grow here in the town, that has to comply with the EV ordinance that was recently passed. And you've got some work to do on that front. My intent here is not to cover everything that staff comments have or what other colleagues of mine may bring up, but I want to emphasize the need for you to take a look at our comprehensive plan and ensure that you're meeting the intent and the blueprint that is laid out in that comprehensive plan. We have, a very big concern about the built environment here. I look at it from, the point of, are we doing any harm? And so I would look in future submissions, a way you can prove in which you're bringing this part of the built environment into this area and you're going to do no harm. I think at this point, I'd like to offer the floor to the other colleagues to discuss, but I'm very interested in the built environment, and we as a state also have goals, and minimizing greenhouse gas through combustion products within the buildings is a concern, is something that I'd like you to address when you come back with the site plan. How are you going to minimize and do no harm? So I guess that challenge is to you.
Understood.
I have a question on that, if you can hear me.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Aaron Converse, West 77 Partners, the development group
Thank
for
you.
this project. Sorry for not being there. Weather was kind of an issue. I was planning on it. I just wanted to make sure I understood a couple things, and I can address a couple other if you need to. We've built, plenty of these hotels across the country, mainly in the Pacific Northwest, and 2 acres is our sweet spot. That's what we look for when we are looking for sites all across the country. We've done this many times up in the Northwest, as I mentioned. So when you say too big, or I guess my next real question is the harm that you've mentioned. I just wanted to make sure I understood what that meant, so we can address that when we resubmit.
I guess that's a fair question. And I guess what I'm saying is looking at some of these space and bulk requirements that we have within our ordinance, the maximum footprint is limited to the 30,000 square feet and specifies a 17% building coverage. I just want to make sure that you're going to have an appropriate sized building. And one of the things that I'll be looking at is a lot of times we hear about, the size of drive aisles and parking lot widths and reduction of those and seeking waivers. And sometimes that's appropriate, but I want to make sure that we're not doing those kind of things so that we can maximize the building footprint.
Sure.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to say when I say do no harm.
Understood. Yeah, Stephen, are we requesting any reduction in parking or widths or anything?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm just trying to make sure that when you come
understood.
back to us.
I got it. Yeah. No,
Those are the
message
kind of things
received.
we're looking at.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
And let me say that a sketch plan wouldn't necessarily contain all of the waivers, but we would certainly expect to see any requests in the first submission. Thank you. Going down this way, Noah. Noah passes. James.
I have a question, more comments. playing off of Mr. Mike King's comments, what I'd like to see here is something that blends in a little bit more with the surroundings. There's a lot of trees in that area. Understanding that there are a lot of other commercial entities in that space, but this is going to be another sizable building on Muzzy Road that's already very busy with traffic during winter months and especially during summer months. My biggest concern, and I believe that her name was Denise, who spoke in the public comment, is how close that exit is to the gallery entrance or the Gallery Boulevard intersection. If you're at peak summer months and there are people trying to come and go throughout the day, because it's not residential, it's not regular, early in the morning, late in the afternoon, I really see a really big addition of traffic congestion in that area. Especially with the other 4 or 5 street lights that are just within a quarter of a mile or less of that spot. So I would want to see what your plan is and what a traffic report would say to how would you mitigate, the traffic flow of however many parking spots these are at however percentage average capacity, flooding out onto Muzzy Road during rush hour in the morning, peak summer season. Also, and again, we're not looking at photometrics at this stage, but if it's a giant building with a lot of lights that are going on, really want to see, especially the backside of the building, how it abuts the neighboring property, whether if it's commercial, residential, but likely commercial, how are you going to be mitigating your lighting cutoff when the building is just that close? Additionally, from an aesthetic point of view, looking at slide 17 on the PowerPoint that the town has, the colors of building, I'm certainly not a landscape architect, but if you want to have something that fits more the character of Scarborough here, maybe a little bit something less blocky. This building is something that's likely going to be here for the next 15 to 20 years, and thousands of people are going to be driving by this every single day. And anything that's lightly colored is going to fade and get dirty over time and really not be aesthetically pleasing. So I would really consider looking at your entire building envelope and really seeing if that's something that matches other buildings in the area. I guess kind of those are the general points that I have at this time.
Thank you. Roger?
Thank you. That last question by Jim prompted me to ask this question. Is this the standard color scheme that you use for all your properties?
Yeah, this is the prototypical design and color scheme, yes.
Okay. I wanted to also ask, staff had a number of comments for your consideration. Are there any comments that really you have an issue with that the staff, just jump right out that are a problem for you?
Issue with? No, I think they're all workable, as kind of Stephen mentioned earlier. I think we'll have questions based on, as those questions come through, but Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see anything that jump out at me, no.
Okay, I think you really should make a great effort to talk to the next door neighbor about access, because I think that's going to be critical. You're going to run into a problem if you only have a right in and right out, I think, because that's going to lead people to drive into the gallery or drive into lot 89 and make a U-turn and all these other things. So I would really encourage you to make every effort to work out something. And I would think it would be, seeing as the same landowner, I think that it's probably a good possibility you might be able to work out something there. And assuming you could, can I assume then that you would kind of move the building location?
Roger, that's hard to answer right now. I want to make sure I have, everything dialed in before I answer that.
Okay.
Maybe, everything's right. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we could definitely talk to who we need to talk to and get in front of whoever we need to get in front of to make sure this thing works. We really want to be in the town of Scarborough. So whatever we can do to work together is what our goals are.
Okay. My last question is on your operations. Is this a long-term type, stay facility, or is this basically just overnight people?
Both. We accommodate both. We particularly go towards military, traveling nurses, displaced families for the longer stays, but then we also have, your nightly people as well.
Okay, is this your first facility in Maine?
In Maine, yes, we're working through one over in Syracuse, New York, but up in the Northeast there.
Okay. That's all I have right now. Again, I would just urge you to make every effort to deal with that access location.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen?
Yeah, thanks. I in return, I think that's sort of a no-brainer to have that conversation with your abutter. And in particularly, I appreciate your team's approach to that. It seems like you're very willing to have that conversation, and I realize that it takes two parties to negotiate, and so being forthright with that, that's going to work certainly in your favor, because I suspect that as soon as you get to the traffic study, into the detailed elements of the traffic study, that accommodating left turns into this site, into what is currently the left turn lane, dedicated left turn lane, approaching that signal will become tricky. But I'm sure that your team can take a look at that. And I suppose it goes without saying that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if an agreement, a cross-access easement agreement is something that you're able to work out with the abutter, it looks to me as though the layout of the site would have to change a fair amount. Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah, most likely.
Like
we'll
maybe
have
flip
to,
it over or something?
Yeah, we'd have to really dial into that. Yeah.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if you had if there was a way that driveway could work, just being accessed in a different way. But that was my first thought, was that you'd probably have to do some shuffling around.
Mhm.
Other comments are, I think, you're taking a largely wooded site, it looks like, and clearing it. However, it does look like you're trying to maintain that wooded and vegetated nature, sort of like through the buffers in the back part of the site, which I appreciate. One thing that might be helpful when you come back to us with future submissions is to maybe provide some, it's probably gonna be hard because the whole backside of that I think is wooded, but in some cases it's helpful for us to see, like, all wooded areas are not created equal, so sometimes on a plan it looks to us like you're retaining this buffer area, but if that's really sparse and low vegetation, then maybe a buffer would be better off being sort of more planned out or more densely planted. But if you have very dense vegetation, there's really no sense in cutting that back just to put in new plants to provide buffer space. It doesn't look, I think it would be nice to add, and if it's shown on here, it's not jumping out at me, but again, this looks pretty advanced for sketch plan anyway, but any sort of outdoor gathering area, benches, tables, sort of something like that. If someone wanted to take a call outside or eat if they were staying there, particularly if your business plan accommodates longer term residents. We don't have, the town doesn't have a wealth of, this isn't neighboring a park or something like that. We do have a lot of open spaces that are available to our residents and visitors, but none directly adjacent to this, unless I'm mistaken. And so I just think as any sort of outdoor area, gathering space would be sort of a nice amenity to add there, particularly if you're doing the nice landscaping like you're showing in the front. And I also be curious to see what your visions are for the front door of this site, for lack of a better term. So signage and or any landscaping or treatment along the frontage of Muzzy Road, I think will be of interest. You have a fair amount of setback there. And I'm sure you will be wanting some sort of sign. but again, yes, because this is otherwise a pretty wooded site. I'm just curious if you plan to keep any of that vegetation along the front or go a different direction.
Yeah, all of the above. Yeah, we, keep what we can for sure. And then also make sure the development can all work and people can see us still.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks.
You done, Jen?
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Have you guys considered the options of alternative energy on the rooftop? This is nearly, not nearly a quarter acre of rooftop looks like you'll have there. In terms of, going back to the kind of do no harm of the project. There, interestingly enough, there's a number of neighboring hotels that have installed large scale solar systems on their rooftops. So I'm just curious if you guys have considered this alternative.
Considered it, looked at it. Yeah, I mean, yes and no. We like it, don't love it yet. So, but we would consider it and look at it here too. And we look at it everywhere we go.
Thank you. First of all, I want to, I really appreciate the discussion that we've had in which you indicate a willingness to work with us and to work with the staff. The staff that we have are top notch. And if they suggest something to you strongly, I would advise you to really, really consider that. We take their advice to us very seriously. They are the ones who are reviewing constantly all of the ordinances to ensure that what comes before us meets the ordinances. One of the things that Mr. Sanderson's memo highlighted was the suggestion that you take a look at the design standards. So I took his advice and I took a look at the design standards as well. And there are some sections of the design standards that I think you need to take into consideration very, very carefully. So I'm going to read to you from a couple of the suggestions, a couple of the sections of the design standards under architecture, page 15 in our design standards. On the design of national franchises. National franchises, e.g. restaurants, service stations, retail stores, are welcome and permitted use within Scarborough's commercial districts. However, the design of those buildings can contribute to the loss of identity for Scarborough by the repetition of generic architectural forms that are found throughout the country. Buildings for these types of uses shall reflect an awareness of New England architectural traditions in their form, detailing, and materials. We usually translate that into a requirement for a New England vernacular in terms of the construction. Also under design standards, franchise styles, architectural forms primarily derived from building styles from other regions of the country are prohibited. New England regional prototypes from national franchises are permitted provided they meet the design standards. There is another section under the design standards, general principles, architecture, page 2, I think. New building shall be designed to fit the individual characteristics of their particular site. The architecture shall be influenced by traditional New England building forms and town-making patterns. And again, there talks about good neighborhoods and relationship to residential properties. Now, while the properties on either side of you are listed as basically business, an apartment complex is in many respects residential. As one of my colleagues talked about the necessity for appropriate lighting going into places where people live, the apartments. On page, again, site planning 2, relationships to residential properties, the facades of buildings which abut or are visible from residential neighborhoods shall use forms, materials, and details which are residential in nature and appearances. Service areas, parking lots, outdoor storage yards, and other similar features shall avoid facing residential neighborhoods. Now, you're probably not going to be able to change a parking lot all that much on this site. But one of the things that we do require, as Ms. Ladd discussed, is a gathering place and an appropriate facade on a building that welcomes people in, that gives them a place to sit, that gives them a place to meet. We're going to be looking for that, or certainly I'm going to be looking for that. Also under architectural goals, good neighborhood buildings that thoughtfully consider scale, form, orientation, height, setback, massing materials, and architectural features. Those are the goals. Buildings that are designed as permanent positive additions to the commercial district, constructed of high quality, long-lasting materials. We also talk in terms of site planning goals about quality development that respects the uniqueness of each property and reinforces Scarborough's sense of place and character. And we also talk about protection for abutting residential properties through sensitive site planning, buffering, and architectural design. All of that is leading me to say that I have a problem with your architectural design. At this point, I cannot see the New England vernacular. I understand that you use a great deal of the Scandinavian influence with the last name of Hendrickson. I understand that. I like Scandinavian. My husband's ancestors are from Voss in Norway, but Scarborough doesn't have Scandinavian architecture. It would not be fitting in with what we have. We don't require four-square buildings. We don't require capes. But we do require that you understand that the architecture should fit in with the rest of the town. So let me suggest that somebody from your corporation take a ride through the Scarborough Downs. Take a look at the gables, condos, take a look at Tandem Court, take a look at the planning for Hackamore 2. These are buildings that maintain a New England vernacular, at the same time provide an interesting building that could in itself transfer, if it were larger, into an appropriate design standard for a hotel. It's possible that you can change this enough, this design. I would caution against the brown and white. Change the design to fit the needs of our design standards, but it's going to be not particularly easy. It's going to require a great deal of thought and some good architectural inspiration. I certainly appreciate your willingness and your interest in Scarborough and your interest in working with us. I think this is something that would be a benefit to the town, certainly to the population that you're aiming for in terms of a business model. That is a very handy location, allowing anybody who lives there the opportunity to go into the gallery, assuming that you can come up with a way that they can do that safely, that meets good access requirements. It's both a strange site and an unusual area to site a hotel, and at the same time, something that could be very beneficial to a lot of people as a home away from home. So I look forward to seeing you again and hope that we have responded, given you enough information that will, when you come back to us, we will have something that we all can say, this is something that works for Scarborough. Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. I do have one more question. Is there anybody that I can work with as far as the architectural, so we're not coming back to a planning meeting and showing you something that no one's seen before? We can maybe have interim discussions. Is that possible?
I think you would have interim discussions with the planning director and the
Okay.
staff person. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
They know what's available. They know what's around. They've got a good sense of probably how we think. We might be a little frightened that they have a good sense about that. But anyhow, I look forward to seeing you again. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, we now have the election of officers. I'm going to surprise Roger Beely by asking him as the secretary to run the election for the chair, and then the new chair will run the elections for the rest of the officers. Roger, you up for it?
Thanks for the surprise.
That's okay. There are
Um,
only 5 of us voting, so this always becomes just a little awkward.
Okay, I guess I will entertain nominations for chair of the planning board. Anybody wishing to make a nomination?
Mr. Secretary, I may nominate the current chair, Rachel Henderson, to assume the reins of harnessing this group for 2023.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Is there a second?
I'll second.
That's Jim Hebert?
Yes.
Okay. No further nominations? I guess Denise, will you take the row?
Doreen,
I mean,
Rachel
Doreen,
Henry?
I'm sorry.
Rachel Henriksen,
yeah, I'm going to vote for myself, yes.
Rick King,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes,
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
and Jim Hebert.
Yes.
okay, now we're accepting nominations for vice chair. Do we have anybody nominating anybody for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate the current vice chair, Mr. Meinking.
I second.
Okay. Okay. Any further nominations? Okay, Doreen,
Roger Beely,
yes.
Jennifer Ladd,
Yes.
Jim Hebert,
Yes.
and Rachel Henriksen.
Yes. Rick, you can vote for yourself if you would like.
As long as you show up to the meetings, I'll be fine.
I'll give you my schedule.
How do you
All right,
want
thank
me
you.
to handle the secretary?
I will take care of the secretary, Mr. Secretary.
Okay,
I will hold, I'm now asking for nominations for the position of secretary for the planning board.
I nominate Roger Beely.
Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, we have 2 seconds, but I heard Jim first. Are there any additional nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. Doreen, please call the roll for
Rick
Roger
Beely,
Beely.
Rick King,
Yes.
Jim Hebert,
Yes.
Rachel Henriksen,
Yes,
Jennifer Ladd.
Yes.
congratulations, Roger. You can't duck out. You've got it.
the money is amazing.
Shh, Rick will now start to inquire about that, you know. I was hoping to keep that quiet. Now we have the appointment of planning board liaisons to the town boards and committees. There's one for the Long Range Planning Committee, one for the Transportation Committee. Just as a reminder, these are annual appointments. In other words, you are on as long as you're on the planning board or until the next election. The Long Range Planning Committee, for folks who are interested, meets on the first Friday of the month from 8 in the morning until we get kicked out, but usually at 9:30. The liaison to the Long Range Planning Committee is not a voting member. The Transportation Committee, I'm not clear on when that meets, but the person who is the liaison to the Transportation Committee actually is a voting member of that committee. Again, this is a one-year appointment. I will take nominations for the Long Range. For folks' information, I'm the current liaison to Long Range Planning, and Roger Beely is the current liaison to the Transportation Committee. I will now take nominations for the Long Range Planning Committee.
Madam Chair, I've given this some consideration, and there's been a lot of things going on with long-range planning and hopefully someday we'll get a state-approved comprehensive plan. But there's a lot of work that's been going on, and you have been on that committee doing the work, and I think it's important for some continuity. And so I would urge my colleagues to consider those points as I make a motion to have you continue on the long-range planning.
Thank you.
Second.
A motion is not required at this point. A second is required. The motion
second.
comes if there is nobody else who is nominated.
Oh,
We'll talk about Robert's Rules of Order after a time, over coffee.
Me and Robert never got along too well.
Is there a second?
second.
Second from Roger Beely. Is there additional nomination? Hearing none, Robert says that the secretary is instructed to cast one vote for the nomination, for the person who's nominated, and that would be me. There are only 5 of us, so I'm not going to go through that. Doreen, just call the roll.
Rick King,
Yes.
Roger Beely,
Yes,
Jim Hebert,
Yes.
and Jennifer Led.
Yes.
Thank you very much, folks. As I indicated tonight, we are going to be reviewing all of the design standards. And at some point, I may actually understand what it means by New England vernacular. I will. We're going on a field trip, yeah. For the Transportation Committee, is there a nominee for Transportation? I'm going to nominate Roger Beely for the Transportation Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Give it to Jen. She,
Yeah,
there was a virtual delay.
I
in that,
heard,
and
I heard Jen's voice just slightly ahead of Rick's. Is there any additional nomination for the liaison to the Transportation Committee? Hearing none, call the roll, please.
Jennifer Led,
Yes.
Rachel Henriksen.
Yes,
Rick King.
Yes.
And Jim Hebert.
Yes.
thank you very much. Congratulations, Roger. Doreen, will you make sure that the staff people and the chairs of each of these committee know who the committee member is for the next year? Staff report.
Thank you. So the next meeting of the planning board is going to be on a Tuesday, as Monday, February 20th is President's Day. So the next meeting is Tuesday, February 21st. Roger, I think you had said we'd be without you. So I will make sure early that we have a quorum. There is a Maine Municipal Association training opportunity. Thank you, Rick King, for bringing this to our attention on developing solutions on hotly contested issues. We don't really have that in Scarborough, but we wanted to let you guys know that there was an opportunity. So that's being held on March 29th, which is a Wednesday from 2 to 5 p.m. at the DoubleTree in South Portland. So if you want to sign up for that, let us know. We can have Doreen or Autumn, or I can sign you up using town funds.
All right, if anybody wants to raise nose right now and they want to raise their hands, please do so. Mind King, me, Jim. Roger or Jen
I won't be around.
on March 29th.
No.
Okay. All right, 3 of us. And anybody else? Nope.
Otherwise, one of the more exciting items that we've been working on lately is transitioning to a new agenda. I don't know if it's a software or a website, but a new agenda service basically called Board Docs. There are some other communities in the area that use this. I don't know who's sharing that. Is that you, Angela, or can you go to Board Docs? Yep, if you just go to the town council page and then, oh. So the current way to get to Board Docs right now is via the town council agenda and minutes page. That automatically brings you to the town council page on Board Docs. There's a drop-down menu on the top right of the screen where you can click the board or committee you'd like to see an agenda from. I think right now we have planning, zoning, town council. There might be one other one on there, but I think the council and the planning board are the only 2 that are sort of up and running at this point, and zoning board of appeals is not far behind. We've had a lot of residents comment that the longer agendas sometimes crash their computers or the files are too large to open. So I think this is going to be a very welcome change. And certainly we're going to be keeping you updated as this gets more use and we start using it for our official agenda. It really does a good job at laying out each agenda item. So you can see the description like normal, but then you can click on each item and it'll show you the application materials, the plan sets. We can even add in staff comments. It's pretty comprehensive. It's a good service. So we can actually feature meetings, which you can see in the middle there. I don't know if we're going to get booted down once more boards and committees start using this service, but for now we're right up there at the top. So it's going to be a service that we're going to be transitioning to soon, and hopefully training you on in the next couple of weeks or months as we move forward.
And this is sort of our trial. So we're live right now, but it's a little hard to get to. And that was by design. So if you all could take a minute and just look at it and see what you think, we're still working on it, but it'll be a lot easier to find for your next meeting. And eventually the goal is to go away from paper and Google Drive and all of those things. So yeah, just take a look at it and let us know if you have any thoughts or anything else you'd like to see, or you hate it, you love it, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Can I just make a comment?
Sure.
Primarily to the chair, Rachel. One thing I thought about when I was looking at this today, and as a viewer, when you're viewing meetings, whether it's our meeting or whatever, but especially planning board meetings, if you come into the meeting somewhere not at the very beginning, say we're having an extensive discussion about the Downs or something, sometimes it takes a while to try and figure out what everybody's talking about. And it might be a good idea if you can remember to do this, Rachel. For instance, say I'm asking some questions, then I'm done. And then you go to Jen. Before you go to Jen, you just say, just for the public's awareness, we're talking about the Downs right now, or something like that, you know? It just might make it a little easier for people to follow what we're doing. Sometimes I know in the past I've tried to figure out what the project is by looking at the streets and things like that. So just a thought anyways.
Yeah, I'll try to figure out how to do that, Roger. It's not always easy, but there may be a way that every so often in between discussions, I can review so that, when it's time for the town, that's usually the introduction. When it's time then for the applicant to repeat where we are. And then when it's time for the board to repeat what we're discussing. Beyond that, I'm not sure how much I can do, but I think I can do that process. And that would bring some of the people up to date.
Yeah, I think ideally, if there was some scrolling along the bottom of the screen, but apparently that's not possible. To just, if there was a scroll that identified what was being discussed, what project and stuff like that, but I guess that's not available because I've asked about it in the past, so.
I was actually just going to suggest, if I may, I know the broadcast staff has been able to say, put something on the bottom of the screen that says Dan Bacon, Scarborough Downs or something when an application is being heard. So potentially if it could say agenda item number 5, down subdivision amendment, or something to that effect, that could aid in this and maybe make your job a little easier, Madam Chair. So something else that we can think about moving forward.
Yeah, let's figure out how we can do that.
Madam
I
Chair.
wanted to give you more to think about.
Oh, sure. Rick?
While we're making a wish list.
We're still on staff report, but go ahead.
Well, we're talking about this, what would be kind of cool is as we are going through the staff comments that you do a fabulous job. And it comes to, all right, in accordance with this ordinance, is there a way to hyperlink so that you would get right to that ordinance from that staff comment? Because I tell you, I spend a lot of time, the binder's like this thick. And I spend a lot of time trying to get to that page so I can read it. But if we had the staff comment and then a link to the pertinent ordinance, boy, that would make, I wouldn't have to drink 3 6-packs, only 2.
Rick, you might be surprised, but that's actually an incredibly easy fix. The only downside is that people who print out the comments wouldn't be able to, but that's a pretty easy fix.
I do use my computer for a lot, and I recognize that some people don't use electronics, so therefore it wouldn't work, but it would be great as I go through the review. That's all. Sorry to take up the time.
No, that's okay. I'm just forbearing from asking you why you have not yet memorized them. But, we're moving on.
I have a quick comment along
Sure.
those same lines. If this platform is to go on, and which I think sounds like a great idea, and I'm looking forward to sort of getting more familiar with it. But if the intent is to make more of the meeting material available to the public, generally in electronic fashion, if we could extend that same request to the extent that it's possible to our applicants as well. So for example, if someone's submitting a really long, the electronic equivalent of a very thick bound, submission book, if that could have like an active table of content so that it's easy to flip to appendices or the stormwater report or things like that. For the short ones, it's not that bad. But for real lengthy applications, even in reviewing them, but certainly also for our the members of the public going through that material who's likely to be less familiar with it anyway. So a lot of times those links aren't that difficult to put in, but can be really helpful on the other end.
All right, is the staff clear on its job for the next month and a half?
Yes, thank you. No
Okay,
more comments will be taken.
comment period is now closed. Anything else on the staff report?
Yes, so there's 2 ordinance amendments and proposals that have been vetted by their respective committees. One is the fuel cell energy standards for small scale energy systems, which has been reviewed by the Sustainability Committee and will be going to the Ordinance Committee. And the hotel motel conversion to multifamily has been to the Housing Alliance and will be going to the Ordinance Committee soon. So the board should be seeing that in March or April. In terms of building permits, we're very close to issuing the permit for Hackamore Apartments 2, and the permit has been issued for Marden's Starbucks in the Marden's parking lot. So work should be underway for that within the next week or so. CO wise, Uplands 2 received its certificate of occupancy, I think it was last week. And Throttle Garage, which was approved, I believe initially in 2020 or 2021, behind the Throttle Car Club on Dynamic Drive, did receive a CO. So that's it for the staff report. And I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Certainly, for those of you who are new, Uplands is the first two houses as you go on to the Scarborough Downs on the left. There are two buildings right close to the road. They're 3, 4 stories high, can't remember. They are affordable senior housing. So that's 79 units of affordable senior housing. So if the certificate of occupancy has been issued on the second building, then it is all set. Administrative amendment report,
None at this time.
minor development reviews,
None at this time.
correspondence,
None.
planning board comments. I would like to start off by saying I really appreciate your agreeing that I can return to the long-range planning. Can hardly wait to get my teeth into the design standards. And I really appreciate the confidence that the town council showed me when it reappointed me to the planning board for a 3-year term. That is my final appointment. I have served for 2 years, for 2 terms, and this is the final one. Who else on the board? Rick.
I'd like to welcome Noah. I'm glad to have you. I know we've only had somewhat discussions between conservation and sustainability, but I think you make a great addition and I welcome you aboard.
I would like to welcome Noah also, and I appreciate the support for the 2 appointments for me, the high-paying jobs, you know.
Yeah, when I said I would meet you for coffee, Roger, you're buying, just so you know.
I could probably afford a donut, get you a donut too.
Any other board comments? No? In that case, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All I see is people gathering up their stuff ready to leave. We are adjourned.